Reverse mortgages, cabinet shuffles, and buying opportunities. Yeah, this is what we talk about with our good friend and mortgage broker, Dion Begg, right after this. Yes, my friends, here we are with our favorite mortgage broker in all of the land, Dion Begg. How are you, my man?
Hey Gary, I'm great, man. How you doing?
Excellent, excellent. I love the new look too, by the way.
Yes, yes, laser eye surgery, so readjusting to the ability to actually see for the first time in 30 something years. So that'll be fun.
Excellent, excellent. Congrats, and I wish you a speedy recovery. I know it's tough going at first, but it's well worth it.
Yeah.
As I talk to you with still with my glasses on, but that's okay. It's all good. It's all good. So some interesting things over the last, week or two. We've had a number of different things. We're going to talk about, the cabinet shuffle in the Canadian government. We're going to talk about some of the things that we're seeing, the phone calls we're receiving or lack thereof.
Mhm.
And of course, something new that's coming to light, Dion, of course, and I know you've been educating some of your clients on, and that's simply, that generational wealth, but also how does someone that doesn't have a lot of savings leverage their home? And some of the ways we can do that is, of course, through reverse mortgages. And I know there's a lot of uncertainty or confusion around what that is. So talk to us a little bit about that first off.
Yeah, sure. So there's been obviously a challenge for first-time home buyers in buying their own property. And we've spoken about this. On the reverse end of the spectrum are their parents who have been these beneficiaries of what you and I have referred to as the lottery, where they bought a property years ago for 500,000. It's now worth $2 million, maybe, depending on where it is. And so what we see is parents who have this great source of equity, but still have challenges with cash flow because they may be on a diminished or reduced pension type income, but they have this equity, and then they're looking at their children who their whole life they've helped in some form through education or feeding them or clothing them or whatever it might be, and they want their children to get into the real estate market, but maybe they can't uh, afford to take out debt on their principal residence because it's going to impact their cash flow. So that's the scenario in many sort of households. Have you been seeing this yourself, Gary? And have clients been expressing concern around like wanting to help, but they're not being able to help?
Absolutely. I mean, the conversation almost comes up daily, right? So it's certainly on the top of people's mind. Of course, that's the age group that I'm in and that I hang out with. We're starting to have children. You start to think about university, or some of my friends obviously have, mid 20-year-olds, even to 30-year-olds, and that is a major concern. Is how does my child own a house, or how am I able going to help them, and more importantly, Dion, how can I help myself?
Right, right. And so this is exactly a conversation I had this week with some clients. So I want you to imagine. Well, let me ask you this question, Gary. Would you prefer to receive $400,000 inheritance at age 55 or $200,000 early inheritance at age 35? So half the amount, but 20 years earlier. Which of those two would you choose?
Yeah, I like this conversation. It's option two at the 35-year-old age. That's where I could have used it the most.
Correct, correct. And you know that's what most of our clients are choosing. And it's not because they're desperate. It's because they're smart enough to know that $200,000 in their hands today, used wisely, is going to result in a lot more. And I just ran these numbers for this client, so I'll tell you what they are. So imagine if today you got this $200,000 early inheritance rather than a $400,000 inheritance 20 years from now. And you've made the decision, I'm going to take the 200 grand less, but I'm going to take it today. So what you could do with that 200 grand is you could use that as a 20% down payment on a $1 million piece of real estate. And you and I have worked in real estate long enough to know that the average growth in real estate in the GTA Golden Horseshoe is around 5% a year. It's in fact more, but we use five. We don't use the 30s and 10s and 15s that we've seen recently. We use five. Okay, and so at 5%, it means that in 20 years from now, the date at which you could have held off and got the larger inheritance, that property that you bought for a million is likely going to be worth somewhere around 2.6 million. So you're adding around 1.6 million to your net worth at that point, and there's going to be principal pay down on that original mortgage. You bundle all that together, the decision to take the 200 grand today to buy that property, be it a principal residence or an investment property, results in probably an outcome of $2 million if all that happens is just regular growth. So $2 million versus the 400 grand that you would have got as, I guess, an inheritance when your parents passed. So it's 5 times more in this example. And certainly these numbers can't be guaranteed, but it's more likely that we're going to get closer to that number than the 400 grand number.
Yeah, yeah. It's we often think, oh, I'm gonna pass on my wealth, much later in life, but I hear more and more stories of, just as you described it. You know, I don't need. I mean, we can always use an extra $400,000 in our 50s or what have you. But when I was 30 or 35, man, could I have ever used that $200,000? Right?
Yeah, and I
It
think
just so much more valuable to me with a young family and things like that, as opposed to say now.
100%. And so that's the impact on you, right, as the
Yeah.
younger person in that family. But I've had these conversations with these older people, and they also like a couple of things. And let's just talk about it and put it all under this umbrella of early inheritance, because it's kind of what it is, right? Getting an early inheritance rather than waiting for the people to pass. So what that means is, number one, the gift or the older person gets to witness the impact on their children's life that that money has, right? In many cases, it's going to be able to provide housing. This most recent example was a 70-year-old woman who lived in sort of the core GTA area. And her daughter and daughter's family, in order to buy a property, would have likely had to buy about 2 hours away from where she lived. Okay, so we've got grandma with the idea that grandkids are going to be 2 hours away, right? But utilizing this reverse mortgage strategy, what we're going to be able to do is access some equity in her property, about the 200K that we were referring to before. It's going to not cost this older lady any repayments, because that's the way reverse mortgages work, right? There aren't any repayments involved. The costs are capitalized to the loan, and that's paid out in the future at some point when the property is disposed of. And usually that happens on death many, many years from now. But what happens is now grandma can give this gift to her child and grandkids, and they can now afford to buy a property closer to their grandparents, right? And so not only is it an economic gift, but it's also almost like a family structuring gift where you can actually build this lifestyle. And there's many, many elderly people in Toronto whose families live far, far away from them because they just can't afford it. But this is a strategy which allows everybody to win in some way.
Yeah, yeah, I like it. I like it. And of course, if you've got questions, obviously reach out to Dion in regards to reverse mortgage or accessing equity in helping your children or loved ones, in a sense, grow their wealth. It's incredibly important, and we do have to think differently. I definitely, going forward, we have to think differently on how we generate wealth and how we pass that wealth on, or how we help others. So let's talk about
Yeah.
what's going on in the Canadian government. I know you and I don't really dive deep into those conversations too often, but sometimes, from time to time, I should say, we do need to address kind of the elephant in the room, in a sense. But there was a little, I don't want to say a little. There was a big cabinet shakeup over the last week or so with a number of new cabinet ministers and so forth. Talk to us about what's going on from the housing perspective.
Yes, so as it relates to us, yes, the previous housing minister, Ahmed Hussein, has been moved out, and he's been replaced by Sean Fraser. Now, this is really interesting. When you look at the history of each of these two individuals, Ahmed Hussein, who last week was housing minister, previously held the immigration portfolio. So he was the immigration minister. And we've discussed this ad nauseum in terms of the amount of immigration that's been coming into the country, which is totally fine, as long as we have housing to accommodate them. And when you look at sort of what Ahmed Hussein's position, you think you just got to be logical and say, if you were the if you were the immigration minister and you knew the numbers of people that had come in, were projected to come in based on your decisions, and then you were given the portfolio of housing to manage, then you can't say you didn't know that we were probably going to have a housing supply issue. And again, I'm apolitical. I'm just calling logic as logic here, right? So that's what's happened. And then Ahmed Hussein has been moved out. Now his replacement, Sean Fraser, guess what his portfolio used to be as of last week, Gary?
Yeah, I'm gonna take a wild guess and follow the same path as his predecessor.
Correct. So the current housing minister was just as of last week the immigration minister. And so in months and weeks and maybe years from now, depending on what happens at elections or whatever, we can never hear this guy say the words, "I didn't see this coming. I didn't know all these people were coming." That was certainly inside of his purview, right?
Yeah,
And I laughed at this with my wife. It's like, I put it this way: look, I'm an immigrant. I believe that the future of our nation really depends on the increase in immigration in our country. That's a given. But at the same time, I also love inviting people over to my house, and sometimes to stay for a couple of days or a week or whatever it might be. But before I invite those people to my house, I do go and make sure I have enough rooms in my house to accommodate those people.
I
And
love this analogy. Keep it coming, man.
this is the honest truth. One time we had some people coming over, and then another family of friend of ours was wanted to come over, and I said to my wife, "Hey, we could make it work. We've got enough space." And Gary, you're a married man, and you understand what I'm about to say. My wife gave me one sideways glance, and that's all I needed to know to say, Dion, what you're trying to do here isn't going to happen because it just doesn't make sense, right? And so I think that maybe our housing ministers' wives need to give them a good side eye and say, or immigration managers, immigration ministers' wives need to give them a side eye and say, do we have enough beds to make sure that these people can be comfortably, safely accommodated? And as much
Yeah,
as we're joking, it is a real crisis right now, Gary. Housing, cost of rents, it's getting beyond ridiculous,
it
and
is.
hopefully, and again, Sean Fraser is saying that he wants to attack this through the supply side. We've heard this before. Let us hope that he is the guy who can make it happen because we desperately need change.
Yeah, yeah. Well, here it is, my friends. Wherever you stand in your political beliefs, the election booth is your side eye look. So how's that sound? Yeah,
Correct,
right.
correct.
We
Let me.
all.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, we always talk about voter turnout. Well, the voter turnout is that side eye, right? That's take the advantage that we have here in Canada and vote. Whether it doesn't matter who you vote for, as long as you cast your vote. That's the way I look at it, right?
Right, right. So let me tell you a little bit about what surprised me about the Canadian electoral system,
Mm,
right, which is different from the Australian electoral system. So here, as a citizen, it's your right whether or not you want to vote. You do not have to go to the polling booth. If you don't go, so be it.
mm.
In Australia, that's not the case. So Australia, like Canada, is a democracy. You can go and vote, right? But if you don't go to the polling booth on polling day or that those couple of days you're allowed to vote, you will actually get fined for not showing up to vote.
Interesting.
Now, this doesn't mean you have to vote. It doesn't mean you still have to go into the voting ballot
To
box.
register or what have you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
register, and you can take your piece of paper with all the names on it, and instead of check marking one of them, you can take a blank piece of paper and drop it in there, and you have cast a blank vote, but you've cast a vote, right? It's
Interesting.
very different. But what happens is voter turnout, 100%. And when voter turnout's 100% or near enough to 100%, then people go to themselves, they say to themselves, if I have to go to the damn school on the weekend to vote, then I may as well think about who I want to vote for and why. And so I think Australia's system is a little bit different from Canada. I'm saying it's better or worse, but I think a higher voter turnout is not a bad result for any country.
No, that's intriguing. I see. Here I am learning today. I love it. Uh, I wonder what that ripple effect would be here in Canada if we implemented something similar. That's interesting. I didn't know that. Didn't
Yeah,
know
yeah,
that.
I think it was a pretty cool idea, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, good stuff, good stuff. So obviously, with the new housing minister, Sean Fraser, you can't say he's not equipped with the information of
Exactly.
knowing what, fundamentally what, some of the larger markets in all of Canada need, and it doesn't matter how you believe it or what you believe in. We need more housing. That's
Correct.
the
Correct.
bottom line. We need more housing. Of course, more affordable housing. That only comes with more housing. That's the plain and simple thing of it, right?
And let me open this conversation. And I don't know. I truthfully don't know the answer to this, but for many years in Canada, there's been a points system for immigrants, and those point systems have been heavily weighted towards professionals, in particular white collar, medical, IT. Um, Consulting, those types of things have been where if you want to come to this country and you hold those types of background skills, that you will be pushed to kind of like the top of the list in terms of coming to this country because you're adding your skills to this country. My question is, with the labor shortage we have for skilled trades, has that weighting changed to whereby we're actually bringing people in this country who can in fact build the housing that needs to house themselves and their fellow immigrants? I think that would be something that if it's already not being done, that they really should make a deep push into.
Yeah, yeah. And I think we need to look at that even, do I dare say, even from a short term perspective, meaning, you look at some of the other countries around the world, they'll bring in entire work crews to develop, new subdivisions and new this and new that. And, that's how they do it. That's how some of these other countries can build so fast because they're literally hiring a work crew from you name it country and bringing them in here for
Correct.
2 years,
Correct.
5 years. Yeah.
So, look, it's summertime right now, and I'll give you this sort of anecdote. It's summertime, and last summer I went strawberry picking with my kids in like where the Big Apple is, east of
Totally know where
Oshawa.
you are. Yeah.
You know
Yeah.
where the Big Apple is,
Just off
okay?
the 401.
Right.
Hey,
So I go there. I'm going fruit picking with my kids. They're loving it, and I realized that the majority of people there are not from Canada. They're working on this farm, and they're not from Canada. So I go up and I start talking with them. Hey, where are you from? Oh, we're from Jamaica. We come here seasonally to do this work because it's work that we like to do, and the government has allowed us to come in for this special period of time, this project, seasonally to do this. And you think about that and you go, well, maybe it's Canada helping that country and develop skills for those people in that country, or is it because there is a shortage that Canada recognizes where Canadians don't or cannot do that job? I don't know what the reasoning behind it is, but if they've made that decision for that working visa to exist, then what you're proposing there, Gary, doesn't seem that far of a stretch of the imagination.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I experienced the exact same thing here in my own backyard. Uh, some awesome Mexicans almost entirely built my pool, right? And
Oh,
they
right.
come here seasonally, and it's based
Wow.
on that. Yeah, yeah, interesting,
Okay.
interesting.
Okay. And look,
So
I'll say this because again, we're on this topic. Um, so in Australia, they also have a similar system that we have here in Canada, bringing immigrants from the surrounding countries. I was born in Fiji, and we have Fijians working in Australia, traditionally in labor-intensive jobs like fruit picking and other things. But more recently, what they've done is they've actually started sending Australian educators to to those countries. So they'll send Australian teachers to Fiji. That these people, these Fijians, are coming to Australia, and not just Fiji, but I'll use that as an example. These Fijians are going to come to Australia in a year once their visa's properly been processed. But what do they do in that year? They actually get skilled and educated to Australian standards, so that by the time they arrive in Australia, they actually have the qualifications that allow them to walk into Australian work sites without
excellent.
having to go through all the red tape that many immigrants in Canada are sitting on the sidelines waiting to actually go through so they can get back into the medical field. Like how many Uber drivers are doctors or lawyers that are
Yeah,
out of position right now? And if they had been skilled while overseas, while waiting for their immigration papers, then they're landing here ready to go into their professions, which would be amazing.
yeah, that would be. So, I mean, what we're saying here is we need more labor skilled uh, citizens, if you will, here locally in all of Canada. That's good. We should probably talk about the market a
Sure.
little bit, a little bit. But this is what I love about doing our videos together, Dion. Is there's we obviously launched this about, how do we educate people on building wealth and understanding the mortgage side of it. But there's so much more to real estate and to life than just mortgages. And I appreciate having these conversations with you. Okay, in the market over the last couple of weeks, personally, funny enough, I've helped a couple of more clients than usual. However, it's the real estate cycle also is you're going to hear numbers, and the Toronto real estate numbers are actually out today, and I'll be posting a video about that shortly about the current state in July, and the number of sales are going to be down compared to last year and things like that, and values are coming down to where they were in January and February. Dion and I can both tell you that the number of phone calls and, in fact, transactions we're seeing are down lower than usual. You're seeing the same thing, right? You're the phone calls that you're taking. I think we might have just lost Dion here. Hang on a second. Resume. I handed it off to you, so now start your answer again.
Yeah, sure. So we've certainly seen a slowdown in, I guess, call inquiry and applications being requested. And I think we can draw a straight line to what happened at the start of this month, July 12th, with the change in interest rates. Whereas, I guess, earlier in the year, we had no changes. Then we had a small bump, which took a little bit of steam off. That second bump in July is the one that seems to have really put the brakes on for a lot of people. But yeah, that's what I'm seeing here, and I know you have some thoughts about what this means for the next say 2-3 months in the market, right?
Yeah, well, for sure, and it even showed up as early as yesterday, where I was working with buyers, and did we go look at some homes where they were priced incredibly low to perhaps what they should be? Yes, we did, and in fact, one of those homes sold for well over asking. But on the flip side, we also took a home and got it under contract yesterday for about approximately 5% under the asking price, which is to say, Dion, I truly do believe the next 2-3 months, especially probably around that 3 month, we're going to see a lot less transactions, which means opportunity, right? Yes, the interest rates have changed, and that's adjusting some of the valuations, but I think we're going to see some great opportunity for buyers in 2 or 3 months from now, or even up to the next 3 months or so, as people kind of get accustomed to that new norm and things like that. But you're going to have some sellers out there that get a little nervous, and that's what happens when that pendulum swings pretty quickly. You get nervous, especially as a seller, when it goes from a good hot sellers market to that buyers market. You get some nervous sellers, and I think there's going to be a true buying opportunity over the next several months.
Yeah, I would agree. And I know I'm the mortgage broker in the room, but the one thing I'd say to that is if there's a chance that something like that might happen and you're thinking that maybe buying might be a thing, but you're scared right now because of what happened this month with the interest rates, still go and get your pre approval. It just
Mm-hmm.
takes you a little bit of time. And if the market turns like it sometimes does very quickly, you can have your paperwork ready to jump on that opportunity if and when it presents. And like you said, Gary, like you're not the first realtor to tell me that the pricing, the way that realtors are listing in regards to pricing, has done a 180 in the last 3 months, where it used to be price low, assuming that prices will get bid up. I think that from what I'm hearing now, you better price right at the market and potentially be expect to be knocked down a little. Is that a fair comment? Is that
That is a fair comment, and if one of my agents called me today and asked for that specific advice, I'd probably say, look at your market value, look at your valuation, and we'll just use $1 million as a fair market value. I would list at 995 or something just below that fair market value. Not to say we want a bidding war, but if you've got competition that's already priced at 1,025,000 or 1,050,000, and it's the same products, you've got the advantage of coming to market after them in a sense, and I'd list just slightly below, just a couple of points below, because you don't. I use this phrase all the time with my agents and even with my clients. You don't want to be on the market. You want to be in the market. When
Right.
you're in the market, things sell. You purchase,
Gotcha.
you buy, or you sell. Yeah, so it's really really important from that perspective. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
That's a good
So
question.
all the more reason to use a realtor who's very experienced in your market where you live, not based on last year's sales or even last quarter's sales. It's
Mhm.
like last month and last week. That's what you need to be pricing on right now.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And like Dion, as he mentors many of the mortgage agents that he works with, likewise, that's what I'm here for, mentoring many of our agents, realtors, in our brokerage, and in fact, right across Canada too. So, uh, Dion and I, we come to this because we're in it all the time, and meaning, we're working on our own transactions, but also we get to hear the many transactions, Dion, I'm sure that you do as well, that your agents are working on, so you feel what's going on in the market, and that comes with experience as well, many years of experience.
Yeah, yeah. I think the thing that makes us better in our business is not the years; it's the number of transactions that you get exposure to, and that generally happens with years, I guess, at the same time. But
He's not
but
trying to say we're old, but he's saying we're old.
yeah, but we might be
Yeah.
laser eye surgery and all. Yes. Okay.
Good stuff. Good stuff. All right, my friend. How do people get a hold of you? Remind us again.
Yeah, you can reach out to me at mortgagesbydion.com.
There you have it, my friend. So lots of stuff covered today. Always like reading your comments. Send us questions, and we're happy to answer them. That's Dion Begg. Of course, I'm Gary McGowan. We'll see everybody in the next video. Goodbye for now.